All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Unlocking Section 3 Potential Power in Partnerships webinar. My name is Annalyn Nesbitt Rodriguez with ICF, and I'll be your moderator for today. All right, today we're going to first go through a few quick interactive questions, which is going to hopefully give us a sense of who's in the room and what questions you might have around building partnerships that'll strengthen your Section 3 programs. Then we're going to hear from a seasoned workforce development professional who will provide an overview of the workforce development landscape and valuable insight into building partnerships across that landscape. After that, we're going to hear from some industry professionals who have had success and made some interesting partnerships that are going to serve their Section 3 programs well. We also have with us today their partners. So we're going to get to hear from both sides of those impactful partnerships. Last but not least, we're going to hear an example from the field, an innovative partnership, and the results of that partnership. And it's really, really, really good stuff. So we're going to have opportunities for Q&A throughout the session. I strongly encourage you to input your questions into the Q&A box along the way so that we can be sure to answer as many of them as possible. Next slide, please. So please know that today's webinar is really meant to focus on power in partnerships, how to build partnerships, and how those partnerships benefit both entities who participate in them, particularly as that applies to your Section 3 programs. If you have general or technical program specific, Section 3 specific questions, please utilize the resources that are here on the screen. We're going to drop these links into the chat here for you so that you can grab them. There are a number of resources here like the Section 3, the HUD.gov website, HUD Exchange. If you have technical questions, you can ask a question through the Ask a Question desk, and you can request more in-depth technical assistance through HUD Exchange as well. So again, we're going to put those links into the chat box. You can grab them because if you have those really Section 3 specific questions, we want you to get your information, but we're going to really focus today's session on partnerships. So if you have those partnership related questions and certainly questions related to the guidance being offered from our speakers today, please do input those questions into the Q&A box as soon as they come to you. All right, next slide, please. So now we're going to head on over to Mentimeter. Mentimeter is a fun, interactive tool that you can access via your smartphone or your computer browser by opening a window and going to menti.com. So that's menti.com. menti.com. When you get in there, you should see a screen that asks for a code, and if you'll enter the code 47636192, and it's on the screen here, the 47636192. And when you're logged in, if you'll go ahead and give us the thumbs up so that we know that you're ready. I see a couple of thumbs up in there already, and that's fabulous. As soon as folks get logged in, we will go ahead to our Mentimeter questions. Thank you. Okay, yes, please go ahead and start. We'll start with the first question here. So when you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up? Um, what did you want to be when you grew up? Okay, and this is a word cloud, so the more people, teacher stands out there big. Lots of folks want to be teachers. It's a wonderful, wonderful profession. So I understand teachers, lawyers, doctors, fashion models. I see archaeologists. That's really interesting. um, Pediatrician. I see a fighter pilot, a tornado chaser. Well, we have an interesting group of people here today. That's really cool. A chef. I think a chef would be really cool. I see an FBI agent. That's very cool. And teacher seems to be, holding strong there. That's beautiful. Police officer, psychologist, flight attendant, marine biologist. Wonderful. All right. Very cool. Okay, so we have lots of lots of interesting people with lots of different interests in the room. So very cool. I see baseball player. Very cool. I'm not gonna represent my team here, but yes, go baseball. Okay, let's move on to our next question here. In which state is your agency located? So this, you should be able to just tap the state if you're on your phone or click it if you're on your computer and let us know where you're at. This is really interesting just to see geographically who we have in the room, what, HUD regions are represented here. Looks like we have a really good representation all across the United States here. Lots of folks from California. Very nice. I see a few from North Carolina. Nobody from South Carolina. I'm waiting for a bubble to pop up on South Carolina here. That's where I'm at. But no one quite yet. Oh, there we go. All right. Hello, South Carolina. Very nice. It looks like, wow, lots of folks from California here. That's awesome. Okay. Thank you all so much. We'll move on to our next question. This is really good information for us to have. So, what partnerships, if any, does your organization currently enjoy? And this is whether it's, pertinent to Section 3 or not. What types of partnerships does your agency currently enjoy in general? There may be a partnership that you work on with another division or another part of your agency that, hey, maybe this will apply to Section 3 and we haven't thought of it yet. So, yes. PHAs, housing authorities. I see Pennsylvania in there. I've worked with Pennsylvania before. Hello, Pennsylvania. Local developers, certainly. Um, Public services, local and state governments, absolutely. The city, other departments, developers, none. And that's okay too. We're here to hopefully give some ideas as how we can make these partnerships. Disaster recovery. Yeah, see that a lot. Government, local chodos, absolutely. Job Corps, that's really interesting, especially for Section 3. I can see where that would be really helpful with Section 3. Virginia Career Works, fabulous. Housing Fund, right. Local contractors, Job Corps, fabulous. Thank you all so much. Really good information here, and maybe someone will see this and say, you know what, we do have a really good, uh, you know, uh, Job Corps or Youth Build program or this. I see city consultant, city government. Maybe you're with the PHA and you say, you know what, we should strengthen our partnership with the city. COCs, continuums of care, absolutely. Nonprofits, fabulous partners. Okay, CBDOs, I see that as well. And CHODOs again. Workforce Commission, that's wonderful. We're going to hear a little bit about that today. So, Department of Labor, residents associations, absolutely. If you're a PHA, you're probably already working with your resident associations, but um, if not, or if you work for the city, there are resident associations that could be good for you to work with. This is wonderful information. Thank you. Union training programs, absolutely, and that's really, really direct with Section 3 as well. And I see Habitat for Humanity as well. So, okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Let's move on to our final question here, and then we'll get talking to our speakers today. Well, what questions do you have around building partnerships? This is going to help us. We have the session for today kind of built, but as our speakers who are in the room can see the questions that you might have, maybe they can throw that in if it's not already a part of it and make sure that we try to answer any questions that you have around building partnerships in particular. Or maybe you're just here and you're not sure what questions you have, but you want to learn and see what other people have done. Continuing partnerships through agency turnover. How to get buy-in to teach proper documentation for Section 3. None at the moment. Absolutely fine. Um, common to leverage for the program and to what end. Absolutely. Hopefully we'll give you a couple of ideas today about some partnerships that you can leverage. Just listening to learn new things. Wonderful. Welcome. Glad you're here. How can we realistically house for developers when we really don't have any control as to who they hire? So yeah, it's the hiring kind of the new Section 3 rule doesn't focus so much on hiring anymore. how to start a youth build consortium. That's awesome. And that's, yeah, that's definitely would be helpful to Section 3. Okay. How do we increase partnerships? Section 3 and contractors. All right. Thank you. Best practices for partnerships. Hopefully we can give you guys all of this, some of this today, a lot of it today. All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating. This was really great information to have for this session and as we build future sessions. All right. Now we can go on back to the slide deck. Um, so during our last session, which was yesterday, we had a panel discussion and we talked about identifying available resources within their organizations. This panel gave us ideas on how they identified resources, what internal resources they used to help achieve capacity. It was all about capacity building. We talked a lot about plans, policies, and procedures to improve the effectiveness of Section 3 plans and how they developed those and how they deployed those on their website or different ways to make it easier for developers and contractors to digest and get on board. So that was a really great session. Today, we're going to dive into partnerships. Again, the power in partnerships. And we're going to start here with workforce development and Section 3 partnerships. I'd like to introduce our first speaker for today. If you can go to the next slide. All right. William Ed Trumbull. Hi, Ed. Ed is the Vice President of Workforce Innovation here at ICF. Ed has 34 years of executive workforce innovation experience. His areas of expertise include diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, work-based training, especially registered apprenticeship programs. He prepares impactful community benefit plans. He focuses on public engagement, particularly with disadvantaged communities, the creation of communities of practice, peer-to-peer learning and design, development, implementation, and continuous improvement of impactful workforce solutions. So if that is not a mouthful, you've been at this for a while, and we're really, really happy to hear from you today, Ed. So I'll give it to you. Just take it away.
Andolyn, thank you very much for that introduction. My mother would be very pleased with that. So that's very impressive. Let's go to the next slide. So I was actually charged with two specific elements. One is to provide an overview of the nation's workforce development system, the publicly financed employment and training system, and then to actually provide some guiding questions about partnerships that I've been involved with, and to kind of like distill it down to how to create an impactful partnership with a workforce development organization. So, and to do this all within 10 minutes or less. So I think let's kind of go to the national system. So essentially there are three tiers. There's the federal level, state level, local levels. And here we're actually going to speak about the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act of 2014, which is actually being considered for reauthorization right now. It's been authorized and appropriated over the last 5 or so years, and that a bipartisan kind of working draft is actually being considered by Congress right now. So you see at the federal level, the current system, it's about $3 billion of the WIOA system, and it's towards adults and youth and dislocated workers. Adults are considered individuals that are underemployed. Youth, classically 16 to 24, both in school and out of school, and dislocated workers are an individual that has lost their job through no fault of their own. So the funds actually come out of Congress and then move their way, they're appropriated, then they move their way to the United States Department of Labor, the Employment and Training Administration. There are some formulas behind it. Essentially, the money moves from the United States Department of Labor down to about 56 state workforce agencies. Some states have more than one workforce agency, And we also consider Puerto Rico, Guam, the United States Virgin Islands, Mariner, and so the Commonwealths and territories. From there, the funds are actually go down. So it's the US Department of Labor, the 56 state workforce agencies, and then it moves down to the local workforce development boards. And there are about 560 of those across the United States. Like the great state of Maryland has, I think, currently 13 workforce development boards. The District of Columbia is considered one. Virginia, Commonwealth of Virginia has about 15. And then those organizations actually, many of them put a request for a proposal out, and then they hire a contractor to operate their American Job Centers. So you go federal, state, local, operational on the ground. And there they operate both the youth programs as well as the adult programs. So it's kind of like a broad overview of the national system. Let's kind of move on to the slides like guiding partnerships. So that'd be the next slide. All right. So what's really provocative about this is, it's interesting to see some of the organizations talking about with developers and real estate developers. ICF was actually, our team was actually hired by a master developer in Baltimore City called, at the time, Sagamore Development Company, and they were actually revitalizing a portion of Baltimore City, urban redevelopment, parcel of property called Port Covington, 266 acres, waterfront property. And what's really interesting is the master developer, like intentionally wanted to work closely with the entire city of Baltimore, but particularly the adjacent neighborhoods around Port Covington. And so kind of the process that ICF was their guide, especially in the workforce development component. And so what we learned was to engage organizations and, like, what is your organization? The basic journalistic questions. What do you do? And what do you excel at? Where are your areas of excellence? And thinking about the individuals that are involved with those conversations, they were like, what's your authority? Do you have the authority to commit your organization to a partnership with the workforce development community, with the master developer, with perhaps a municipality? So let's move on to the next slide. So these are things you need to consider in advance. Your idea, a partnership has to be mutually beneficial. So in advance, I would respectfully suggest that you think through, from the Section 3 side, what are you proposing? And, so it's like, yes, residents of our Section 3 properties may be a really valuable labor component, workforce component for your prospective project. And it might be customized training, might be on-the-job training, might be a pre-apprenticeship, it might be a registered apprenticeship. So to know clearly in advance what you're proposing, and then for the benefits for all parties involved. So it's the benefits to your organization, it's the benefits to the workforce organization, might be the benefits for the developer. The developer might actually be inspired because their community benefits agreement requires, a certain level of local hiring. And then it's got to benefit the individual and the employer. So to think that through in advance, and then that kind of provides the rationale for a workforce organization. Let's say in Baltimore City, it was the mayor's office of employment development. Why their executive director at the time, a gentleman by the name of Jason Perkins Cohen, why he would commit to being involved with us. And Jason is now the deputy secretary for the Maryland Department of Labor. So you can tell he's been very thoughtful, very engaged, very successful. Let's go to the next slide. All right, now we have to get into the journalistic questions. So this is what you've thought through in advance before you've contacted the workforce organization, its various partners. The basic journalistic questions are: where will it happen? Where are the activities actually going to take place? Are they going to be on the site of this brand new, construction project? Are they going to be virtual? Is there going to be some kind of combination of in-person and virtual training? When will it happen? So you need to know like the periods of performance. What's the expected start date? What's the expected completion date? How will it actually happen? How will your organization participate? How will the workforce organization participate? What are the benefits to those various parties? And then how much? So how much time, how much money? What's the risk? What is the level of effort for all parties involved? So if you think this through in advance and you have a potential solution that you want to share with your local workforce development organization, your local job center, this is Job Corps. This is an amazing opportunity for a very collaborative, collegial, and impactful partnership. Let's go to the next slide. So now I think we've got time for a few minutes for Q&A, and I'm going to turn it over to my other colleague.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for all of that information. Really great information. We got one comment that the first graphic on your first slide was really helpful. I agree that that chart that kind of shows the federal, state, local workforce. So thank you so much. A couple of questions for you here. Um, how can a grantee locate their local workforce investment board? So where should grantee or a PJ or a PHA begin locating?
Um, so you so you could actually contact your the United States Department of Labor has a resource called their one stop career centers, and there's a component in there that actually identifies each state's workforce agency, its state workforce development board, and the local workforce development board. That's one. Another one is just a Google. Like you put in Anne Arundel County, Maryland. You Google it, and all of a sudden you see the Anne Arundel Workforce Development Corporation. So that would be, or in Washington D.C., you see the District of Columbia's Workforce Investment Council. So I think I would keep it simple. I'd put in your local area, Google it, and I think you're probably going to have a high probability of identifying the local workforce development board. And I would respectfully ask, like, once you're prepared, to talk to the leadership, talk to the executive director, talk to the president of the organization, talk to the chief executive of the organization, and kind of share your idea. That's their job. Their job is to help people become employed, retained, and advanced in their career. And your potential solution to help them achieve their job.
So don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call them and explain who you are and what you're trying to do and try to get that meeting
And I realize
with the
it's
leader.
uncomfortable, but but when we operate out of our comfort zones, that's often where we make our greatest successes and impacts.
Absolutely. What are some key strategies or best practices for sustaining those partnerships? So once you've made those partnerships with the workforce entities, um, after they've been initiated, what are some best practices or strategies, if you have some, for maintaining those?
You're going to hear a little bit later about work ICF has done in the United States Virgin Islands. And it started with one project. And so good work begets more good work. So, success kind of breeds the the opportunity to create more partnerships, more sustainability, greater opportunities in the future. So doing today's job well.
That's great. Okay. Thank you so, so much, Ed. We will see you on at the end for the larger Q&A. And thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
You. So for now, we're going to move forward. We're going to now look at a partnership in practice. We're going to speak with New York City Housing Authority and Brooklyn Workforce Innovation. So next slide. I'd like to introduce George Gomez. George is the Resident Economic Empowerment and Sustainability REASE Supervisor for the New York Housing Authority. George supervises a team of project managers overseeing NYCHA, which is New York City Housing Authority, NYCHA's capital contracts, real estate development projects, and special initiatives across New York City, leveraging HUD's Section 3 program to create and provide residents access to skill building training, employment, and career pathways. George strategically builds and sustains these partnerships with developers, skills trades union apprenticeships, workforce development providers, and community stakeholders. So he knows a lot about building and maintaining these partnerships. And with him today, one of his partners, Sean Hagel, the Director for Strategy and Evaluation with Brooklyn Workforce Innovations. And Sean, I apologize. I think that I did not say your last name correctly. I apologize. Sean leads the Brooklyn Workforce Innovations new program development and partnership development work. She leads its tracking and program improvement practices and fundraising. So we're going to hear from both sides of this dynamic partnership today. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to George to get us started.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Angela, and really appreciate the introduction. I think my mother would also be very proud. So good afternoon, folks. Truly great to be with you all. I want to thank you in advance for your participation and certainly following the Mentimeter. Shout out to our aspiring doctors, lawyers, and teachers. Um, Again, glad to be joined by Sean at Brooklyn Workforce Innovation, who is one of our vetted REASE partners who will be speaking later on in our presentation, sort of focusing on the services, um, our partnership and initiatives, including Section 3, and sort of preparing our residents for construction-related positions. So without further ado, for this slide and the next slide, I'm going to provide an overview of REASE. So our office, NYCHA REASE, which Andelin did break down, stands for Resident Economic Empowerment Sustainability, is ultimately charged with developing and implementing programs and policies and collaborations which support our residents increase their income and assets. And we sort of do this with a focus on 4 key areas. And those are employment and advancement, adult education and training, financial capability and asset building, and resident business development. One of the things I want to note here is that these 4 key areas is not something that that NYCHA sort of developed randomly, but were actually shaped and informed by resident feedback through surveys. Next slide, please. So REASE operates through a zone model in which we connect residents to opportunities and services through formal partnerships, which currently sits with about 80 plus economic opportunity providers within 15 zones citywide. Each zone generally has a dedicated REASE zone coordinator, or ZC for short. And to sort of put this into the community context, our ZCs are really the neighborhood-based NYCHA staff, or the boots on the ground that support and manage the partnerships and ultimately connect with residents at the community level. Next slide, please. So we actually had a few slides for this, but we wanted to, so this is really an oversimplified flow of how our partnerships are created. So we've sort of broken them down into 3 steps. So in the first step, it typically starts with us receiving a zone partner application. And this is usually from a partner that might be interested in doing business with NYCHA and or connecting our residents to certain services. And as part of the second step, what happens is a ZC, or a zone coordinator, is assigned to support the partner through the application process, at which point completed applications are reviewed and vetted through an internal review committee, which is generally viewed on a quarterly basis, and a partner is selected or potentially not selected. But for partners who are selected as part of the third and final step, what ends up happening is we develop a strategic plan that becomes sort of part of a term sheet or partnership agreement, at which point the partnership is launched. And I think what's important about our partnerships, right? So we're talking about partnerships in practice, is that NYCHA recognizes that our primary role and function is really serving as a landlord. So I think what's been important for Reese is that we recognize that creating, deferring, and leveraging our partnerships have been essential to best serving our residents because our partners are really the experts serving locally day in and day out. So I think one of the many benefits of our partnership structure is that it really allows us to sort of track, monitor, and report on outcomes or lessons learned that really help shape our best practices and really to decide whether we discontinue or continue with an existing partnership, right? We want to make sure that our partnerships are providing a valuable service to our residents. So we're very intentional about that. Next slide, please. So again, Reese has formal partnerships with over 80 plus economic opportunity providers, which we have broken down into 3 key partnership categories that include city agency partners, academic institutions, and nonprofit partners that all have been instrumental in connecting our residents to training, jobs, and career pathways, even including preparing them for Section 3 related opportunities. And just to name a few or to list a few, some of our key city agency partners include New York City Small Business Services and the Workforce One Centers. We also have New York City Human Resources Administration and the New York City Office of Talent and Workforce Development. Some of our key academic institutions include CUNY and SUNY, which are City University of New York and State University of New York. And just to name a few as it relates to CUNY, we have LaGuardia Community College, Kingsborough Community College, New York City College of Technology, and other SUNY institutions. Some of our key nonprofit partners include Brooklyn Workforce Innovations, the HOPE Program, and St. Nick's Alliance. Next slide, please. So for the next several slides, I'm going to focus on key Reese initiatives, and we'll start with Section 3 and employer partnerships. So for Section 3, while we recognize that Section 3 is in fact a HUD mandate, I think it's important to recognize Section 3 really as an opportunity for all stakeholders to really think creatively and strategically about generating economic opportunities. And I think that from this perspective, we have really been able to leverage this policy to really cultivate partnerships with developer partners, with contractors, with workforce development and training providers, really with the goal of expanding our reach and focus on resident hiring, on job training, and other economic opportunities really specific to our NYCHA projects. And just to give you a very basic but important example of how this is sort of played out in relationship to Section 3, as part of construction work in New York City, we have a local law 196, which is a New York City law, which requires workers on construction sites to obtain a minimum of 30 hours of OSHA construction training and 10 hours of site safety training. Many of our key partners in collaboration with NYCHA developer partners have been instrumental in making sure our residents at minimum get this training to be able to compete or at least be considered for entry-level opportunities on our projects. So again, this is an area where we have really been, very intentional about building specific training and jobs into our contracting and or agreements, ultimately with the focus of benefiting our residents. As it relates to employer partnerships, again, Reese collaborates with city agencies and private employers to connect residents to employment. One, for example, includes recruitment events that we have done at NYCHA campuses for mid-level community roles with another city agency, the New York City Housing Preservation and Development, also known as HPD. Next slide, please. So here we have American Job Centers and Jobs Plus. So collaboration with American Job Centers is a partnership with the Small Business Services where Reese connects residents to Workforce One career centers with the focus of preparing and connecting qualified candidates to employment throughout the 5 boroughs. Jobs Plus is a place-based employment program that provides customized employment services, financial counseling, rent-based incentives, and peer-to-peer support to working age residents through 12 sites serving 43 developments citywide. So in New York City, Jobs Plus is a collaborative effort among multiple city agencies, which include HRA and DSS, that's Human Resources Administration, and Department of Social Services, that serve as lead partner administering the program. And I know it may be difficult for folks to see on the slide, but I'll kind of speak to that blue textual image there. This is a former highlight of NYCHA being the recipient of a HUD Jobs Plus grant, which served the residents of Pennsylvania Wortman Houses in Brooklyn, where 405 members received the full spectrum of services through the program. 91 members were placed in full-time or part-time jobs. 11 enrolled in college. 371 residents received financial coaching or education, and 57 members were able to receive the Job Plus Earned Income Disallowance, which actually resulted in about 300,000 in rent savings. And again, I think an important highlight here is that, Reese has been really focused on and very intentional about fundraising and securing grants that I think have allowed us to really leverage partnerships and connect residents to resources or opportunities that we would have otherwise not been able to do so. I think the Jobs Plus grant that I have highlighted, among others that I'll briefly speak to, is really, a testament to those efforts. Next slide, please. So here we have sector-based training programs. So through public and private partnerships, Reese connects NYCHA residents to a wide range of free sector-based and career pathway training programs. One, for example, is our flagship and award-winning program known as NYCHA Resident Training Academy, NRTA, or NERTA for short, which provides training and job placement assistance across 3 tracks. Those 3 tracks are pest control, construction, and janitorial, which all 3 of them in some capacity lead to careers either at NYCHA and or with some of our NYCHA vendors. The NRTA construction track is an approved New York State Department of Labor direct entry provider pre-apprenticeship program, a lot of words there, which provides direct entry access to our union apprenticeship partners. And right now, I want to say we have about 11 union skilled trade partners that we are currently working with sort of through this direct entry process. And just to briefly highlight some of our other sector-based training programs include NYCHA Health Corps, which is an AmeriCorps program, the NYCHA Clean Energy Academy, and the Housing Career Pathways program, something that Sean at Brooklyn Workforce Innovations will speak to shortly. Next slide, please. Okay, NYCHA Business Pathway Series. So this is a 10 to 15 week business education program that teach NYCHA residents how to lead profitable food, construction, and home-based childcare businesses, providing mentorship, professional coaching, MWBE, and Section 3 business concern registration, which help connect our resident-owned businesses to contracting opportunities and securing licenses needed to grow their business. The one quick thing that I'll say here is that, again, we've been very intentional about connecting, in particular, our food and construction business pathways on some of our Section 3 projects with developer partners who perhaps in some cases have had meetings that needed food to be provided. We've used our food business pathways, and then of course connecting our construction business pathway graduates to contracting opportunities on some of our Section 3 real estate development projects. And this is certainly something that we're continuing to shape and sort of build into our contracting. Next slide, please. So here, very excited about this. This is our Department of Labor Youth Build program. So this is a new program actively in the horizon, as NYCHA is a recent recipient of a 1.38 million US Department of Labor Youth Build grant, which will serve 60 NYCHA residents ages 16 to 24 from the Brownsville Ocean Hill neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York. Through this program, we have every intention to leverage Section 3 opportunities, union and employer partnerships, and the New York City Workforce Development Board to connect graduates to entry-level construction employment and union apprenticeships. Next slide, please. So this slide, a great experience for partners. This slide and the next really highlight, as we wrap up, the sort of the great experience and the power of partnerships. So as it relates to partners, what that means is access and availability to a clear point of contact at Reese. It provides a system for navigating NYCHA and directly connecting NYCHA residents to partners. And it also provides a space for high quality programming and resident data, which ultimately will inform service provision and evaluation. Next slide. So for residents, it's really about leveraging the vetted partnerships, which allows us to provide greater access to comprehensive services. It also provides resources to serve a higher volume of residents, particularly in underserved and or under-resourced communities. And it really positions NYCHA and partners to strategically craft projects that ultimately will produce gainful outcomes. So on that note, I do want to hand it over to Sean at Brooklyn Workforce Innovation, who's going to talk about their services and sort of speak to how we leverage the mutual partnership.
Thanks, George. So Brooklyn Workforce Innovations is a nonprofit workforce development organization. We've been around since 2000, and we currently have 8 programs, primarily sector-focused trainings. So we find areas of the local economy that have entry-level jobs that are on strong career paths, and we design 4 to 7 week full-time training programs that help people access sort of the first rung on that career ladder. Our trainings provide hard skills and soft skills, so that the abilities and skills you need to do the job that we're training for, and also the soft skills that help people find and become successful and advance in those roles. Overall, BWI serves 900 to 1,000 people per year, and about 40% of them are residents of NYCHA housing or NYCHA Section 8. Go to the next slide. We partner with NYCHA in a few different ways. George mentioned a couple of these. The NYCHA Resident Training Academy has been around for about 14 years. We have collectively trained about 4,200 residents through the academy, and BWI has trained 85% of those residents directly. And we also serve in this role as lead workforce development partner. So we're helping to sort of coordinate the activities of the academy, coordinating funding, sometimes engaging with other partners who might do some of the other training programs that we don't directly provide. The Housing Career Pathways program is a partnership that BWI has with both NYCHA and New York City's Affordable Housing Agency, HPD. And that program identifies residents of either NYCHA public housing or affordable housing, and trains people for jobs with affordable housing management companies in lease up and compliance, for which there's a significant demand for these roles. So we're delivering digital skills and an introduction to the affordable housing industry, and then placing people into jobs after that program. We recently celebrated our 100th graduate, and that program is still going strong. George also mentioned the zone partnership. So we're one of those 80+ partners that engages with Reese through a zone partner that allows us to conduct outreach in a particular part of New York City geographically. And that is, that's a very helpful partnership for us in meeting one of the needs that all of our programs have, which is outreach and sort of spreading the word about all of the different training opportunities that we offer to residents of public housing. And then Boulevard Houses is it's a site that has undergone a PACT conversion, which is part of the RAD program. And as part of that, BWI was helped the Housing Development Agency develop a workforce strategy that was sound. And then we directly delivered training to help certain either NYCHA residents or other local residents access that OSHA training that George also mentioned, and then access the construction jobs that were going to be created by that PACT conversion project. Next slide. So this echoes a little bit of what George and also Ed earlier said. The important thing that these partnerships do, I think, most importantly, is creating access. So residents have more information, especially about vetted skills training opportunities that NYCHA has chosen to partner with, including BWI, but also others in New York City. And then for BWI, from our part, because outreach and recruitment is such an important part of how we run our training programs, having strategic partnerships where we can spread the word about programs that are designed to support people who are of low income and are looking for a job, doing that from a single point of contact or from the team at Reese where George works, is a huge benefit to us as an organization. We also, NYCHA is an employer to BWI, an industry expert, and a recruitment partner. So they play a lot of roles from our perspective, and it helps that we're able to benefit from their industry expertise and their unique knowledge of their residents to make sure that our programs are designed to be as responsive as possible to their residents. And through a couple of these different types of partnerships, they really allow us to leverage housing as a job generator. We know that the development and maintenance of affordable and public housing is creating a lot of jobs in New York City. And what our organization does is try to identify those types of opportunities and connect people who are looking for new jobs and career paths to them. So these partnerships are also unique in that way. Slide. And so I think the number one thing that sort of defines what makes these partnerships so successful is our alignment in incentive structures. So BWI has a mission and funding and other types of resources that are pretty well aligned with what NYCHA and particularly what NYCHA Reese also intends to do, and especially around supporting residents, connecting them to jobs and financial stability. It supports both of our missions and goals. And I think this is a really important thing to consider when assessing whether a partnership will be effective and sort of work for both parties. And I think it's something that also someone had a question earlier on about how can we make sure that our partnerships can withstand things like turnover? And when we have true alignment organizationally in these incentive structures, that makes the partnerships much more sustainable. There's a lot of efficiency in our collaboration too. And what I mean by that is we are obviously we have open conversations and open communication and data sharing with NYCHA. But the amount of resources that the collaboration itself takes is really efficient related to how much the benefit that comes out on the other side. So for example, we're not engaging in a lot of meetings that don't end up having a specific purpose in the end. I mentioned communication and data sharing, and then we are very data oriented, BWI and NYCHA, and we keep a close eye on our outcomes so that we're able to identify patterns and both celebrate successes, but also roll up our sleeves and work together when challenges arise. Slide. I think I'm handing it back to Andolyn.
Yes. Thank you so much. We've got a few good questions that have come in. I'm going to ask one and ask for a really quick answer because we're running a little behind and need to get to a quick break. But I think that was tremendous. We're going to save the rest of the questions for the Q&A at the end, so stay tuned and we'll be back. But before we do go to the break, I'm going to ask Sean, your partnership with NYCHA is formal. Do you have any suggestions for how grantees and PHAs with limited capacity and resources might be able to form more informal partnerships with workforce agencies in their community?
Yeah, I think one important thing to consider is that resources can mean a lot of different things, and an agency might actually be rich with a certain kind of resource, such as access and communication with residents, that is highly valuable to another partner. And so I think going back to something I think Ed said earlier on, just thinking about where your strengths are and where you can create access or help sort of align whatever resources you do have with whatever is happening in your local community and what some other potential partners might be doing. And it doesn't always look like money.
Wonderful. Thank you. I wanted to ask that question because it tied in with a few questions that we got. So maybe kind of knocking out a couple of birds with one stone there. But do stay tuned. We're going to bring you guys back at the end and we have questions for you. Right now, we're going to move forward to a quick break. It is 3:22. This is going to be just a 3-minute break. Very quick. Stand up, get some water, and we will meet you back here at 3:25 p.m. Eastern Time to continue. All right. Welcome back, everyone, from a very short break. We're going to continue with our session today. And if you can move me to the next slide. All right, now we're going to take a look at an internal partnership. And we're going to be speaking with the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles. So, next slide, please. All right, I would like to introduce with you from the city of Los Angeles, Sonae Devayan. Sonae is a Section 3 and women and minority owned business compliance administrator with the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles. She's been an integral part of developing HACLA, that's what they're called, HACLA's Section 3 program since 2014. She's overseen the program and is responsible for ensuring Section 3 compliance agency-wide, including working with businesses and ensuring that local Section 3 workers are provided with employment and other economic opportunities. And her internal partner with us here today is Brittany Chime. Brittany is the Workforce Development Manager with HACLA. Brittany has more than 10 years of management experience in public and private programs and services with a core concentration in workforce development, talent management, staffing, employee benefits, training, and development. Ms. Chine is the Workforce Development Manager um, over the Watts LA WorkSource Center and Section 3. So that's all within HACLA. In these capacities, Ms. Chine is responsible for streamlining mentorship programs, policies and procedures, professional training and development, youth development, community partnerships, event planning and management. She does it all. So I'd like to welcome Sonae and Brittany. Welcome, and I'm going to turn it over to Sonae.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for that wonderful introduction, Andalyn. So here at the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles, we are a little bit unique, as Andalyn said in her introductions, because we do own and operate a WorkSource Center internally. So that helps us with a lot of our efforts. But early on, when we were formally adopting our Section 3 policy and we wanted to do just a little bit more than what even just the regulation requires of us, because our heart and our intent was with the Section 3 goal. And we realized that partnerships are going to be key for our success. None of us can do this alone. And regardless how well we're staffed, we just need to recognize that there is no need to recreate the wheel. We can tap into existing resources in the community to make us better. And B, that these resources and organizations, they do this for a living and they're the true experts, so we can rely on them for success. So we took the approach of both looking inward to our WorkSource Center and also to creating other new partnerships that would allow us to expand our outreach. So the key component of our Section 3 program and the partnerships was developing and maintaining a Section 3 worker database. We recognize that with the old rule, many of you who have worked on the old rule too will remember that we had a Section 3 business registry that HUD was maintaining. We at HACLA started maintaining a Section 3 business registry. But we recognize that we also need a formal way, a database of Section 3 workers, our clients that we're going to serve and try to find employment opportunities for. So we decided to maintain this registry and identify who our residents are, what their skill sets are, and what their interests are, and how we can help them to get to that next step in their career goals. So we slowly began building the registry by going to each of our public housing sites, and we have 16 public housing sites throughout the city of Los Angeles. So our coordinator went to each site and started holding recruitment sessions that included a lot of education to our clients and our residents, public housing residents, of what the Section 3 program is, what we're trying to achieve, and enrolling them into our registry. That enrollment took form of a just one-page document where they would just complete their information, the site of residence, which we know is important for identifying the hiring priorities. They would identify what skill sets they already have, their interests in the kind of industry that they wanted to work, and also where they would like to get training and what kind of training, so that we could assist them to develop a certain skill set to be able to become employable. So we slowly started that process and grew our Section 3 resident registry. And because we have a WorkSource Center, and Brittany will talk more about it too, during these enrollments, in some cases, we're immediately able to refer these candidates to certain training programs through our WorkSource Center partners, and others, they just were rolled into our database, and we waited until we had employment opportunities from our contractors to refer them for jobs. So connecting them to various resources and training programs became key to using this database. And the external part of leveraging our partnerships came from the understanding that Worksource Center resources are limited, and we can also tap into outside external partners and service providers. We recognize that a lot of our public housing sites had service providers on site, and we use their resources, their expertise, or even just the outreach component through these service providers, in addition to our Worksource Center resources. And also our contractors and developers have become great partners for us. Some of these partnerships are short-lived, just for the duration of a particular project. Others are longer-term partnerships. For example, with the U.S. Bank, who is the bank that Hakla banks with, we have developed this long-term partnership already that for many years, they do financial literacy trainings for our residents and resident advisory committees. These financial literacy trainings are very important, and our residents seem to really enjoy that and like it, and it's beneficial for them. So every year, at least 2 trainings are held by U.S. Bank. We also have a contract with HD Supply, for example, and I know a lot of housing authorities have contracts with these large material-only contractors, which is technically exempt from Section 3 because they're material-only vendors, right? But we at a housing authority have the mindset of that we can always do more than the regulation is asking us from, because it's just the right thing to do. And whenever we can identify these opportunities, it doesn't matter if the regulation exempts it, then let's do it. So HD Supply partnership came through that understanding and approach that they are a large company and they do have an existing resource of trainings that they provide. So why not tap into that resource? So as we prepare our residents for jobs in the construction field, HD Supply holds these safety trainings on site a couple of times a year or as needed to prepare our residents to become safe workers in our construction sites. We also have our other partnerships with other contractors for trade enrollments and other technical trainings. And others are able to provide tools and work supplies if they're not able to hire. I saw a question in the chat box of like, if we're able to do, like, what do we do for contractors who have a small workforce or workforce that's already complete, they don't need to hire any more residents. So these are the kinds of things that we try to do with those kinds of contractors. You know, it's not just the hiring, it's these qualitative efforts, these partnerships that we can create, especially with those contractors who have connections with the unions. They can enroll our residents into the union programs or other training programs, or just support them with tools and other supplies and prepare them for work with another contractor. One of the other things that we do, I believe that's unique, is working with our contractors, even if they do not have current job opportunities at the Hagla project, to see if they have job opportunities in their other projects. Because a lot of the time we all work with large developers and prime contractors who have many projects throughout the city. And while maybe that particular project with Hagla may be small and limited in scope, if they have opportunities in other areas, then we try to connect our residents to those jobs and training programs as well. Now, those jobs and enrollments do not necessarily end up being in our data that we collect to report to HUD, but that's okay, because that's part of our qualitative efforts and our larger effort to develop the skill set of our residents and make them employable and put them on that path of self-sufficiency. And with that, I would want to turn it over now to Brittany, who will talk more about the resources that Worksource Center has and how they're able to support the Section 3 operations, because it's this partnership that we have created that Section 3 contractors are able to provide the jobs, and then Worksource Center is able to provide the residents who have already been trained through their various programs to be better candidates for these jobs.
All right. So Nate, I really enjoyed hearing everything that you had to say, especially about the things that HACLA does that's not necessarily required by Section 3, like working with contractors even when they don't necessarily have an active contract with HACLA. I just wanted to acknowledge that and all of those things. And you're right, that does serve as qualitative efforts in the end. So, um, can you explain the process? And I'm not I believe this was you. I'm hoping that was you and not Brittany. The process of how you developed and maintained the Section 3 worker database?
Absolutely, and that's a great question. So creating a database was not a one-time thing. It requires an ongoing maintenance. So what we do is we still continue going to our public housing sites on a regular schedule. Our coordinator goes to almost each site on a weekly basis. So, and we continuously update the registry. If an individual gets hired through the registry, then they are in an inactive mode for that period of time so that we do not refer them to another contractor for jobs. And then when they complete that work and they need assistance from us again with placement to another job, then they notify us, we activate them again in our database so then we can refer them to the next job. And then if something happens, then they're no longer interested in working with us, we completely take them off the list. And recognizing that, you know, the more outreach we do, the more we can do even. We continuously go to the sites and enroll new residents and update it. So it's an ever continuous process. It just never ends.
What level of accountability, if any, does your partnership have with hiring organizations when it comes to those candidates that are being referred by hiring organizations in, making sure that they're a Section 3 or targeted Section 3 worker? Do you guys follow up personally and actually review that data, or when they come in from a hiring organization, how does that work?
So when we do our referral, then we identify the hiring priority of that candidate. And then when they're hired, the organization sends us a document completed by both that organization, the employer, and the Section 3 worker. And we verify that. So then, whether it is through our internal systems, verifying that they are a public housing resident, they meet the qualifications. Sometimes we reach out to them via just a phone call to see how it's going. The Worksource Center, Brittany's team, will follow up with them 6 months later, a year later, through other resources, other trainings that they are receiving. So it takes a variety of forms. There is no one size fits all formula kind of. It all just depends who they work with. We ran into them in the construction side. Yes, we see them or we see their family member, a lot of times. And this is what is interesting with Section 3 is that it just becomes so personal. It's not just numbers. You need to know your residents. You need to gain their trust and the support, and they all know it. Some of our residents, I was actually doing some interviews a few weeks ago at one of our sites, and he just started talking about the hiring priorities and how the contractors have to do this. And I was like, you know better than I do all this process, so that's part of the process, educating our residents so they're aware too. And they let us know. We have that relationship with a lot of our residents, and we try to create it so that we know what they're doing and what their families are doing, who they're working with, and they come and notify us or we ask them. And we do a lot of their profiles too, and we share those stories with other residents so that others get encouraged too.
Wonderful. Okay. Sounds like you are educating all along the way and very, very involved. So, all right. Thank you so much. Okay. So, Nathan, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll try to do as good of a job as Brittany would have done. But so our Worksource Center started as a one-stop portal and subcontractor to Hollywood Worksource Center back in 1992. And since then, it has grown and gained its full designation as a Worksource Center in 2014. And since then, we have expanded our partnerships to include recruitment events through the LAX, Los Angeles airports, the job development team, some construction projects in council districts, and we have made partnerships with the George Lucas Museum. Kaiser, the healthcare organization, is really large in this area, so we have a partnership with Kaiser Watts Project. Children's Institute from the area is providing a lot of good resources. And one of the other unique partnerships with that WorkSource Center has been able to create is the Prime Store Retail Partners of the Jordan Downs Plaza. So what happened is when we were developing the Jordan Downs housing unit, that included a retail component of it. And Prime Store is the retail provider there. It's a large plaza with about 15 stores there. So technically, again, outside of the Section 3 purview, but we recognize that this is going to be a great resource, and Prime Store and WorkSource Center have been working closely together to make sure that our residents are given priority in jobs at those retail jobs that are available just right within like walking distance to our public housing sites. Our WorkSource Center in 2023 managed 6 supplemental subcontract agreements that expanded our workforce development services at Nickerson Gardens, Jordan Downs, Pueblo del Rio, and Mar Vista. These are our public housing units. They are based just near one of our public housing sites, but they also have presence in 14 public housing developments that we have throughout the city of LA. We're very spread out. So there are 10 computer labs, and there are partner agencies that are co-located with our WorkSource Center that help us to provide resources to all parts of our city residents. They put together job fairs and recruitment events that help with the WorkSource Center to attract clients, to enroll them for the training programs through the WorkSource Center, and also to leverage that for the Section 3 opportunities. WorkSource Center, Hakla's WorkSource Center follows an integrated service delivery model. So they do outreach, orientations, skill assessments, the career exploration, and full range of employment services, workshops, basic skill remediation. They provide supportive services, training, job search. They do a lot of the resume preparation, the soft skills that Sean spoke a little bit earlier from Brooklyn Workforce Development Board, like how to go to an interview, how to dress, and all these other steps that are required before you actually go and get a job. So next slide, please. The strength of the WorkSource Center. One of the first things before even you do anything in the community is you need to get their trust. So trust is a key component, and we want to be able to deliver on our promises in our communities. So we have worked really hard over the many years to build that trust with our community, with our residents, and to bring in the resources to them so then they can just follow through with those resources and better themselves. And we provide that with our partners. We also do continuous outreach efforts. The question about the Section 3 worker database too, right? Again, a continuous outreach effort to continuously reach residents. And we have new residents coming in, old ones that we're not aware of, or a month ago, 2 months ago, they were not interested in our services, but they may be interested now. So it's continuous outreach efforts. We're always out there in the community to provide them the support so they know who we are, when we are there, and they come and see us, and they know that it's an open and welcoming place for them to just walk into our WorkSource Center and know that someone there will help them and listen to them. We have a lot of staff who are providing support and get really engaged with these residents. They know them, they know their families, and interact with them. The other day I had an incident when we couldn't find a resident, and one of our WorkSource Center staff goes like, well, let me just go and knock on his door. And that's just the kind of approach that we have. If we cannot reach you over the phone, we're just going to go right, because we're just located right there within our communities, right? So then we just go and knock on the door and see if you're home and what's happening, and ask you, do you want to be referred for this job or for this training program we thought you would be interested in? Next slide, please. Grant performance. WorkSource Center receives a lot of grants, and it is through these grants that we are able to assist our participants and bring in more and more resources and new programs to them for training. Our WorkSource Center is continuously looking for improvements and strategic plannings to enhance the service delivery. We create new partnerships continuously, and in general, the WorkSource Center mission aligns with what we're trying to achieve at the Housing Authority. Not just improve the quality of life, not just to provide housing, but also to just better their family life, the better their communities. And it's just that comprehensive, holistic approach that we have. It's not just the housing, it's also jobs, it's the education, it's the youth programs, and WorkSource Center is able to bring all of those different components together because it may be something different for each family member, depending on their age group. And, you know, no matter what, we're never fully staffed. We have 16 public housing sites, over 20,000 public housing residents, not counting other clients that may come into the WorkSource Center to be served. So no matter how many staff we have, we are limited in our resources. We never have enough coordinators and job developers at the WorkSource Center. So Brittany and her team are always challenged. They have limited resources, limited tools. So we all rely on partnerships and helping each other out. And that's why when I mentioned with the WorkSource Center, we have a lot of great resources, but their resources are limited too. So that when WorkSource Center is able to help HACLA Section 3 team to provide trainings for our residents to make them employable, the same way too, some of our partners from the Section 3 business side are able to supplement some of the limited resources that WorkSource Center may have and help with some of the training programs or other resources for our residents. So it takes a lot of innovative approaches and constantly evolves and changes based on the grants we receive, the funding service, a new contractor, a new developing partner will come in, and then we will just leverage those resources. We recently had another interesting partnership that was like a one-time thing, but hopefully it will continue again in the near future with Harbor Freight, when they just came in and they trained a lot of youth and a lot of hands-on building carpentry work. So, you know, we're always looking for these organizations and businesses who have programs already that we can tap in, that WorkSource Center can use those resources to supplement their limited resources. Next slide, please. You know, and we just wanted to show in this slide the enrollments for public housing residents to our Section 3 worker database. These are the names of our public housing sites that we have. And we go and enroll our residents into the database. And some of them you will see high number of enrollments, and others are very few number of residents, because it all matters, like how big or how small the public housing community is, right? We have some of these housing units here, like the Jordan Downs in the first column that you see 162 enrollments because it's one of the larger public housing sites. And then we have Avalon Gardens or Rose Hills that are some of our smaller housing units, hence the numbers are low. So it all depends, but regardless, we go to these public housing sites on a regular basis and we let them know about our programs, our trainings, and our employment opportunities, and enroll them and try to find employment or other services for them. Next, please.
All right. Thank you so much. We're going to I appreciate so much and thank you for stepping in. We have about 7 minutes left, and we definitely want to make sure that we get to our final speaker for today. So we're going to jump forward. I'm going to go ahead and you guys stay tuned. If we have any time at the end, we're going to come back for questions. If we don't, we will answer questions via email, but hoping that we have just a couple of minutes at the end to get to some questions. And now I'd like to introduce our final speaker for today, Adele Soto. Adele is a works in workforce innovations here at ICF. She has over 30 years of experience in local and national workforce programs, and she's going to tell you about a really great collaborative effort that was made that she worked on in the Virgin Islands. So I'll turn it over to you now, Adele.
Thank you, Andalyn. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to talk a little bit about what happens when partners work together in a small area during critical times. In September of 2017, the U.S. Virgin Islands was hit by two Category 5 hurricanes, Irma and Maria, within a 2-week period, and it devastated the island's infrastructure and severely set back the economy. Initial efforts were made to secure homes and businesses with commercial grade tarps and minor temporary repairs. But that revealed that the territory's workforce was ill-equipped to handle those even small functions. So both public and private sector leaders realized that we were in unprecedented times and something had to be done. They called for mass training of workforce workers to help alleviate this problem a little bit. Excuse me. A few months later, into the recovery of the disasters, the HUD-funded Community Development Block Grant for Disaster Recovery that's managed by the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority became available, and the VI Department of Labor was tasked with creating a program to address those construction deficits. Their program design required training for 400 individuals in the construction trades and 240 individuals in sectors vital to the restoration of the economy, such as hospitality and healthcare. The eligible population to be trained were required to be at least 51% low to moderate income individuals, and about 30% of those individuals had to come from local housing communities. And the period of performance was set at 2 years with an option for a third year. The project was named Skills for Today, and after a competitive process, ICF was selected to administer the program. Now, Skills for Today had 3 overarching goals: to increase accessibility to credentialed and portable construction skills training, to expand employer-driven work-based learning opportunities in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and to strengthen the perception of the Virgin Islands public workforce system as a viable contributor to economic development. All of that speaks to partnerships. Next slide. The strategy was twofold. One, to enhance the construction sector and contribute to the economic recovery by helping employers get their businesses back on track. In construction, using trainers certified in National Center for Construction Education and Research, or NCCER, curricula, our goal was to train 400 workers in their core curriculum, which includes General Introduction to Construction Trades and OSHA 10, both with certification. 300 of those individuals were then to move on to level 1 in one of the trades, such as electrical, plumbing, masonry, or carpentry. Of those, 50 of the successful completers would then move on to supervisory training. We figured this configuration would create pods or teams of construction experts that could move from one project to another. Nationally recognized certification was available at all levels for successful completers. Additionally, partnerships with construction companies were formed so that less skilled individuals could have at least 2 weeks of job shadowing. All successful program completers were referred to the VI Department of Labor and the American Job Centers for job placement. Next slide. On the economic recovery side, in this area, our goal was to focus on the hard-hit industries, especially hospitality, healthcare, information technology, and marine services. Provide work-based learning options, including on-the-job training, customized training, and incumbent worker training to those workers hoping to reconnect with lost employment or advance their skill level for a better position, and for new workers hoping to begin a new career. Registered apprenticeships were developed for those workers requiring long-term structured training, especially in healthcare and marine services. Altogether, our goal was to train 165 individuals in demand occupations. Finally, government agencies were tasked with administering federal grants that aided in the overall recovery of the Virgin Islands. However, few had staff equipped to handle the level of effort required to manage federal grants and operations. To ensure widespread knowledge transfer, we offered training for 75 government workers in introductory courses for grants management, project management, and grant management and project management. Next slide. I'm sorry. Now, the outcomes, plan versus actual, is what's really interesting about this program. Midway through the program, we realized that the initial projects that we had set to do for training, especially in the construction field, was not working. So we did a brief modification. We renegotiated our goals and outcomes to be more aligned with the current demand. We retained 400 individuals to be trained in the core construction skills. However, there was a reduction in the craft skills training slots from 300 to 175, and we removed masonry and carpentry options and added arc welding to the craft list. We also added 125 slots to the work-based learning category for either on-the-job training or customized training, primarily in the hospitality sector. Through this modification, Skills for Today was charged with serving 765 participants throughout the life of the project. Looking at the chart, you can see the initial goal set, the modified goals, and the final results. By the end of the project, all goals were exceeded except for registered apprenticeship. Next slide, please. The project outcomes, as you, okay, so the challenges and lessons learned, we'll go to that. Skills for Today was a successful program due to the meaningful partnerships formed with business community and local training providers, as well as the assistance of the Virgin Islands Department of Labor, the Virgin Islands Housing Authority, and the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority. The support, starting one of the challenges, the program was not without challenges. Starting during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, called for immersive media campaign through social, print, and visual media. Outreach conducted in person was limited to small groups of no more than 5 in well-ventilated areas. There were 2 major challenges to overcome while conducting outreach to the housing communities. One was getting them to the table due to COVID concerns, and the other was their ongoing fear of losing public benefits due to program participation. Both were addressed by conducting a series of visits to the 14 public housing communities territory-wide and establishing an element of trust, letting them know that the program was not a gimmick and would have no adverse impact on their benefits. Another significant challenge to the project was duplicating the program across the 3 islands that comprise the U.S. Virgin Islands. We quickly learned to play to the strengths of each island and focus on the pain points of each, which was hospitality industry in the St. Thomas, St. John districts, and construction in the St. Croix district. Healthcare, information technology, and marine services transcended all 3 islands. The most significant lessons learned were the importance of partnerships in developing well-rounded training offering and the direct input from employers expressing where their workforce gaps were and what direction they plan to take their business moving forward. Together, we were able to develop meaningful training options that benefited the entire community. Thank you. Back to you, Andalyn.
Wonderful. Thank you so, so much, Adele. And thank you to all of our speakers today. I'm so sorry that we couldn't get to more questions, but we will try to address questions that were, if any questions were not answered in the Q&A or in the chat, we will try to address those via email. Just thank you all. I'd like to make sure that everyone knows about the resources. Again, there's an Ask a Question desk. You can also request more in-depth technical assistance on the HUD Exchange. And there's also a plethora of resources on the HUD Exchange and on HUD.gov. Our upcoming webinars, we have a webinar on Tuesday, December 10th from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're going to be talking about effective strategies for Section 3 procurement and contractor management. Don't want to miss that. Also, Wednesday, December 11th from 1 o'clock to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, intentional and impactful multicultural outreach and gender inclusion. So please join us for those 2 webinars coming up. I want to thank our panelists, our speakers once more, and thank all of you for attending and having this really great conversation with us. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.